Captain Maya Rodriguez had been flying F-16s for 8 years when the strangest mission of her career began with a routine convoy escort over the Nevada desert. The morning briefing had been standard protocol. Protect a classified transport moving through restricted airspace. Maintain radio silence except for emergencies, and ensure no unauthorized aircraft approached the convoy. What wasn't mentioned in the briefing was the small etching on her cockpit glass that would change everything. Maya had discovered the etching 3 weeks earlier during pre-flight inspection. It was barely visible, carved into the inner surface of her canopy with surgical precision. The symbol looked like a combination of numbers and letters. J794RH. She'd reported it through proper channels, but maintenance claimed they found nothing suspicious. The etching remained, and Maya had grown accustomed to seeing it during flights. The convoy consisted of 3 black SUVs and 2 military transport trucks, moving in perfect formation along Highway 95. Maya's squadron of 4 F-16s maintained a diamond pattern overhead, their engines humming steadily in the crisp morning air. Her wingman, Captain David Chen, flew beside her with characteristic precision, while Lieutenants Sarah Mitchell and Robert Hayes covered the rear flanks. Convoy is maintaining speed and course, Maya radioed to base control. All aircraft report normal status. Copy that, Falcon leader. Continue escort protocol, came the response from Colonel James Peterson, their commanding officer back at Nellis Air Force Base. Maya checked her instruments and glanced at the convoy below. Something felt off, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly what. The vehicles moved with mechanical precision, but there was an unusual tension in the formation. The lead SUV occasionally made minor course corrections that seemed unnecessary given the straight desert highway. As they approached the 20-mile marker, Maya noticed movement in her peripheral vision. A commercial aircraft was approaching from the east, well outside the restricted zone, but closer than usual civilian traffic. She keyed her radio to report the sighting when something caught her eye. The etching on her cockpit glass was reflecting sunlight in an unusual way, creating a pattern that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of her heartbeat. Maya blinked hard, assuming it was fatigue or optical illusion, but the effect persisted. The symbol J794RH appeared to be glowing faintly, as if activated by some unseen force. Falcon leader, we have civilian aircraft bearing 090, range 15 miles and closing, Lieutenant Mitchell reported. Maya forced herself to focus on the immediate situation. Copy that, Falcon 3. Monitor and report any course changes. The civilian aircraft, a small twin-engine plane, maintained its eastward heading and passed well clear of the restricted zone. As it disappeared into the distance, Maya felt a strange sense of relief, though she couldn't explain why. The convoy continued its steady progress through the desert, and Maya's squadron maintained their protective formation. But the etching on her cockpit glass continued to exhibit that strange luminescent quality, and Maya found herself stealing glances at it despite her better judgment. Something was definitely wrong with this mission, though she couldn't put her finger on what. The convoy, the etching, the unusual atmospheric conditions, everything seemed connected in a way that defied logical explanation. Maya decided to trust her instincts and remain extra vigilant for the remainder of the escort mission. 23 years of military service had taught Major Lisa Thompson that the most dangerous missions often appeared the most routine. As she piloted her F-16 in tight formation with Captain Rodriguez's squadron, she couldn't shake the feeling that today's convoy escort was anything but standard. The intelligence briefing had been unusually sparse, and Colonel Peterson's demeanor suggested classified details were being withheld. Thompson had requested the morning flight specifically because she'd been tracking unusual activity in the sector for several weeks. Satellite imagery showed increased ground movement in areas that should have been empty, and radio intercepts indicated someone was monitoring military communications with sophisticated equipment. The convoy they were escorting might be connected to these anomalies. Falcon Leader, this is Falcon 2, Thompson radioed to Maya. I'm picking up some unusual electromagnetic signatures from the convoy. Are you seeing anything on your instruments? Maya's voice crackled back through the comm system. Negative, Falcon 2. All readings normal. What kind of signatures are you detecting? Thompson studied her electronic warfare displays more carefully. The patterns were subtle but distinct, frequency emissions that didn't match standard military vehicle electronics. Low-frequency pulses, intermittent, could be communication equipment or some kind of scanning device. The convoy maintained its steady pace below them, showing no signs of deviation from the planned route. But Thompson's years of experience had taught her to trust her instruments, especially when they detected anomalies that weren't immediately visible. Falcon Leader, recommend we notify base control about the electromagnetic signatures, Thompson suggested. Agreed. Falcon 2, continue monitoring and document everything you're seeing. As Maya radioed their findings to base control, Thompson noticed something else troubling. The etching on her own cockpit glass, identical to the one Maya had reported, was beginning to exhibit the same strange luminescent properties. The symbol, J794RH, seemed to pulse in rhythm with the electromagnetic emissions she was detecting from the convoy. Colonel Peterson's response from base control was immediate and terse. Falcon Leader, maintain escort protocol. Do not deviate from mission parameters. Those signatures are expected and authorized. Thompson exchanged a concerned glance with Maya's aircraft, though she knew the gesture was invisible at their current formation distance. The colonel's response raised more questions than it answered. If the electromagnetic signatures were expected, why hadn't they been briefed about them? And why did the authorization sound like it came through gritted teeth? "Copy that, base control," Maya responded, continuing escort protocol. But Thompson could hear the uncertainty in her squadron leader's voice. They were all experienced pilots, and they recognized when something didn't add up. The combination of classified cargo, unexpected electromagnetic signatures, and command's evasive responses suggested they were escorting something far more significant than a routine military transport. The desert landscape below them remained desolate and unchanging, but Thompson had the growing sense that they were flying into a situation that none of them fully understood. The etching on her cockpit glass continued to pulse with that strange light, and she found herself wondering if it was some kind of warning system, or something else entirely. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell had always prided herself on her attention to detail, a trait that had served her well during 3 years of military aviation. As she maintained her position in the diamond formation, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The convoy they were escorting was missing something crucial: shadows. The morning sun cast sharp shadows from the F-16s onto the desert floor, but the vehicles below seemed to create shadows that didn't match their apparent size and shape. Mitchell adjusted her altitude slightly to get a better view and confirmed her suspicion. The convoy's shadows were too small, too uniform, and they didn't change appropriately as the vehicles moved over uneven terrain. "Falcon Leader, this is Falcon 3, Mitchell radioed. "Are you getting a clear visual on the convoy? Something seems off about their appearance." Maya's response came quickly. "Specify your observation, Falcon 3. Mitchell chose her words carefully, aware that their communications were being monitored. "The ground signatures aren't matching expected parameters. Recommend closer visual inspection." "Negative, Falcon 3. Maintain current altitude and formation." But Mitchell's training kicked in. She'd been taught to trust her observations, especially when they suggested potential threats or deceptions. She activated her aircraft's high-resolution camera system and began documenting what she was seeing. The images would be crucial if her suspicions proved correct. As she adjusted her camera settings, Mitchell noticed the etching on her cockpit glass, the same mysterious symbol that Maya and Major Thompson had reported. J794RH was now glowing with unmistakable intensity, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed to correspond with her heartbeat. The phenomenon was impossible to ignore or explain away as optical illusion. Lieutenant Robert Hayes, maintaining the rear flank position, noticed Mitchell's subtle course adjustments. Falcon 3, everything okay over there? Just getting a better look at our cargo, Falcon 4, Mitchell replied, keeping her tone neutral. But Hayes had noticed something else that troubled him. The convoy's formation was too perfect, too mechanical. Real drivers, even military professionals, would show minor variations in following distance, slight deviations in lane position, occasional speed fluctuations. The vehicles below moved as if controlled by a single automated system. Falcon Leader, this is Falcon 4, Hayes radioed. I'm observing unusually precise formation flying from our ground units. Has anyone confirmed human drivers in those vehicles? The question hung in the air for several seconds before Maya responded. Falcon 4, maintain radio discipline. All observations are being recorded. Hayes understood the coded message. They were all seeing things that didn't add up, but they couldn't discuss them openly over monitored channels. The convoy, the electromagnetic signatures, the strange shadows, the perfect formation, everything pointed to a scenario that hadn't been covered in their briefing. As the escort mission continued, all four pilots found themselves dealing with the same troubling realization. The etching on their cockpit glass, identical across all aircraft, was now glowing brightly enough to be seen clearly. The symbol, J794RH, had become impossible to ignore, and its pulsing rhythm seemed to be synchronizing across all four aircraft. The desert below remained empty except for the convoy, but the sense of unease among the pilots was growing stronger with each passing minute. Colonel James Peterson sat in the command center at Nellis Air Force Base, monitoring the convoy escort mission with growing anxiety. The pilots were asking too many questions, making too many observations, and their reports were threatening to expose an operation that had been classified at the highest levels. The electromagnetic signatures, the unusual convoy behavior, the mysterious etchings on the cockpit glass, everything was proceeding according to a plan that Peterson himself only partially understood. Sir, Falcon Squadron is reporting multiple anomalies, reported Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, the communications specialist monitoring the flight. Should we provide additional information to calm their concerns? Peterson studied the multiple screens displaying telemetry from the F-16s and the convoy below. Negative. Maintain current information restrictions. The pilots have their orders. But Peterson knew the situation was becoming unstable. The four pilots were experienced and intelligent, and they were rapidly putting together pieces of a puzzle that could compromise national security. The convoy they were escorting wasn't carrying conventional military cargo. It was transporting prototype technology that could revolutionize aerial surveillance and communication systems. The etchings on the cockpit glass weren't accidental or mysterious. They were part of an experimental heads-up display system that was being tested without the pilot's knowledge. The symbol J794RH was actually a frequency identifier that activated when the aircraft came within range of compatible technology. The convoy below was equipped with the corresponding transmission system, creating a communication link that bypassed standard radio channels. Peterson had been ordered to observe the test without informing the pilots, but he was beginning to question the ethics and legality of the experiment. Using military personnel as unwitting test subjects violated numerous regulations, and the pilots' growing suspicions threatened to expose the entire program. "Sir, Falcon Leader is requesting permission to break formation for closer visual inspection," Sergeant Gonzalez reported. "Denied. Instruct them to maintain current altitude and formation." Peterson watched the displays showing the convoy's progress through the desert. The vehicles were indeed operating under automated control, guided by the same technology that was communicating with the aircraft above. The entire operation was a field test of integrated autonomous systems that could coordinate air and ground units without human intervention. "Colonel, we're receiving priority communications from Washington," another technician announced. "They want status updates on the test parameters." Peterson grabbed the secure phone. "This is Colonel Peterson. The test is proceeding as planned, but we may have complications. The pilots are more observant than anticipated." The voice on the other end was cold and efficient. "Colonel, the test must continue. National security depends on this technology. Handle the complications." As Peterson hung up the phone, he realized he was caught between following orders and protecting his pilots. The convoy was approaching a critical phase of the test, and the pilots' questions were becoming more pointed and specific. Soon, they would have enough information to piece together the truth about their mission. The etchings on their cockpit glass were now actively transmitting data to the convoy below, creating a real-time communication and tracking system that represented a breakthrough in military technology. But the pilots' growing suspicions threatened to compromise not just the test, but the entire program. Peterson made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his career. He would continue following orders, but he would also begin documenting everything in case the situation spiraled out of control. Captain Maya Rodriguez felt the weight of command as she processed the mounting evidence that their mission was not what it appeared to be. The electromagnetic signatures, the unusual convoy behavior, the strange etchings on their cockpit glass, everything pointed to a scenario that challenged everything she'd been told about their assignment. As squadron leader, she had a responsibility to her pilots and to the success of their mission, but those responsibilities were beginning to conflict. Falcon 2. Give me your current assessment of those electromagnetic signatures. Maya radioed to Major Thompson. Falcon Leader. The patterns are consistent with advanced communication systems. Frequency analysis suggests active data transmission between unknown sources. Maya processed this information while maintaining her position in the formation. The convoy below continued its mechanical progress through the desert, but she was now certain that human drivers weren't controlling those vehicles. The precision was too perfect, the formation too consistent, and the lack of any visible driver movement confirmed her suspicions. Falcon 3. Document everything you're observing about the convoy's appearance. Maya instructed Lieutenant Mitchell. Already on it, Falcon Leader. High-resolution imaging in progress. As Maya coordinated her squadron's information gathering, she noticed that the etching on her cockpit glass was now bright enough to interfere with her normal vision. The symbol, J794RH, pulsed with increasing intensity, and she realized it was receiving or transmitting data in real time. The implications were staggering. Their aircraft had been modified without their knowledge, and they were unwitting participants in some kind of experimental program. Base Control, this is Falcon Leader, Maya radioed. We need immediate clarification on our mission parameters. My squadron is detecting multiple anomalies that weren't covered in our briefing. Colonel Peterson's response was immediate and stern. Falcon Leader, you are to maintain escort protocol without deviation. All observations are being recorded for post-mission analysis. Maya understood the subtext. They were being monitored, recorded, and used as test subjects for technology they hadn't been informed about. The ethical violations were clear, but she also recognized that they were likely involved in something with national security implications. Falcon 4, what's your assessment of the convoy's movement patterns? Maya asked Lieutenant Hayes. Falcon Leader, the vehicles are operating under automated control. No human drivers visible, formation precision beyond normal capabilities, and response times too fast for human reflexes. Maya made a decision that would define her career. All Falcon units continue escort protocol but maintain heightened awareness. Document everything you observe but keep communications professional. We'll sort this out after the mission. She was walking a tightrope between following orders and protecting her squadron. The convoy below was carrying something important enough to justify using military pilots as unwitting test subjects. But Maya was determined to ensure her people's safety, while gathering enough evidence to demand answers later. The desert landscape continued to roll by beneath them, empty except for the mysterious convoy and its aerial escort. Maya realized that they were probably being observed by multiple agencies, their every move analyzed and recorded. The etching on her cockpit glass seemed to pulse with acknowledgement of her thoughts, as if the system was monitoring not just their aircraft's performance, but their awareness of the situation. Major Lisa Thompson had spent enough years in military intelligence to recognize when an operation was compartmentalized beyond normal security protocols. The Convoy escort mission was exhibiting all the hallmarks of a black project: limited information, unusual technology, and command responses that suggested multiple levels of classification. As she monitored the electromagnetic signatures from the convoy below, she began to piece together a picture that disturbed her professionally and personally. The frequency patterns she was detecting weren't random or incidental. They were sophisticated communication protocols that suggested the convoy was in constant contact with multiple sources. Some of the signals were directed upward toward their aircraft, confirming that the mysterious etchings on their cockpit glass were indeed part of an active communication system. Other signals were being transmitted to unknown locations, possibly satellites or ground stations beyond the immediate area. Falcon Leader, I'm detecting signal traffic that extends beyond our immediate operational area, Thompson reported. This convoy is communicating with multiple external sources. Maya's response was measured. Copy that, Falcon 2. Continue monitoring and document everything. Thompson understood that they were both constrained by the knowledge that their communications were being monitored. But she also recognized that Maya was encouraging thorough documentation, which suggested their squadron leader was as concerned about the situation as she was. As Thompson continued her electronic surveillance, she noticed something that made her stomach tight. The convoy's communication signals included encrypted data streams that were being transmitted directly to their aircraft. The F-16s weren't just escorting the convoy. They were actively participating in a data exchange that none of them had been informed about. The ethical implications were staggering. Military personnel were being used as unwitting test subjects for experimental technology, violating numerous regulations regarding informed consent and human experimentation. Thompson had witnessed similar violations during her intelligence career, and she knew that such programs often operated under special authorities that circumvented normal oversight. Falcon 3, are you documenting the convoy's visual characteristics? Thompson asked Lieutenant Mitchell. Affirmative, Falcon 2, getting detailed imagery of everything. Thompson knew that Mitchell was sharp enough to understand the importance of thorough documentation. If their suspicions were correct, the evidence they were gathering might be crucial for post-mission inquiries or investigations. The etching on Thompson's cockpit glass was now glowing so brightly that it was clearly visible even in direct sunlight. The symbol, J794RH, pulsed in rhythm with the electromagnetic signals she was detecting, confirming that their aircraft had been modified to participate in this experimental communication system. Thompson made a mental note to conduct a thorough post-flight inspection of her aircraft. She suspected they would find modifications that hadn't been documented in normal maintenance records. The implications for flight safety were concerning, but the violation of their rights as military personnel was even more troubling. As the convoy continued its progress through the desert, Thompson realized that they were witnessing the field test of technology that could revolutionize military communication and coordination. But the methods being used to test this technology were ethically questionable and potentially illegal. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell had always been fascinated by the intersection of technology and aviation, but what she was witnessing during the convoy escort mission challenged everything she thought she knew about military protocols and ethics. The high-resolution images she was capturing told a story that was both scientifically impressive and morally troubling. The convoy vehicles were clearly operating under automated control, guided by sophisticated systems that coordinated their movement with precision impossible for human drivers. The electromagnetic signatures that Major Thompson was detecting corresponded with the visual evidence Mitchell was documenting. The vehicles moved as a single integrated system, responding to commands from unknown sources. But the most disturbing aspect of her observations was the realization that their own aircraft were part of the system being tested. The etchings on their cockpit glass weren't decorative or accidental. They were active components of an experimental communication network that was being evaluated using military personnel as unwitting test subjects. Falcon 4, are you seeing any variation in the convoy's formation? Mitchell asked Lieutenant Hayes. Negative, Falcon 3. Formation remains mechanically precise. No human characteristics in their movement patterns. Mitchell continued her photographic documentation while processing the implications of their situation. They were participating in a field test of technology that could revolutionize military operations, but they were doing so without informed consent or proper briefing. The ethical violations were clear, but the national security implications were equally significant. The etching on her cockpit glass was now bright enough to cast shadows inside her aircraft. The symbol, J794RH, pulsed with energy that seemed to correspond with her heartbeat, suggesting that the system was monitoring biological as well as electronic data. The invasion of privacy was comprehensive and unauthorized. Mitchell had studied military history extensively, and she recognized parallels to previous programs where military personnel had been used as test subjects without their knowledge. The ethical standards that had been established to prevent such violations were being ignored in favor of technological advancement and national security priorities. Falcon Leader, my imaging systems are detecting infrared signatures that don't match the convoy's apparent composition, Mitchell reported. The vehicles appear to contain technology that generates significant heat signatures. Maya's response was immediate. Document everything, Falcon 3. We'll need comprehensive records of all observations. Mitchell understood that her squadron leader was encouraging thorough documentation for reasons that extended beyond normal mission requirements. The evidence they were gathering might be crucial for exposing the unauthorized experimentation that was being conducted. As the convoy approached a series of low hills that would provide natural cover from ground observation, Mitchell realized that they were entering a phase of the test that would likely involve more complex maneuvers and communication protocols. The timing wasn't coincidental. The convoy's route had been planned to provide maximum security for the most sensitive aspects of the experiment. The desert landscape below seemed peaceful and empty, but Mitchell knew that they were flying over one of the most sophisticated technological tests in military history. The question was whether the benefits of the technology justified the methods being used to develop it. Lieutenant Robert Hayes had always prided himself on his ability to read situations and people, skills that had served him well during his military career. The convoy escort mission was presenting him with a puzzle that challenged both his technical knowledge and his understanding of military ethics. As he maintained his position in the formation, he processed the mounting evidence that they were unwitting participants in an experimental program. The convoy's movement patterns were the most obvious indicator that something was amiss. Hayes had observed enough military convoys to recognize the subtle variations that indicated human drivers, minor speed fluctuations, occasional lane position adjustments, varying following distances. The vehicles below exhibited none of these characteristics, moving instead with the mechanical precision of automated systems. Falcon Leader, I'm observing zero deviation in convoy speed and formation, Hayes reported. Consistent with automated control systems rather than human operators. Maya's acknowledgement was brief but significant. Copy that, Falcon 4. Continue observations. Hayes understood that his squadron leader was encouraging detailed documentation while maintaining operational security. The knowledge that their communications were being monitored created a complex dynamic where they had to balance mission requirements with their growing awareness of the situation's true nature. The etching on Hayes's cockpit glass was now glowing with unmistakable intensity. The symbol, J794RH, pulsed in rhythm with the convoy's movement, suggesting that their aircraft were receiving real-time data from the vehicles below. The integration was sophisticated and comprehensive, indicating months or years of development and testing. Hayes had studied military technology extensively, and he recognized the significance of what they were witnessing. The coordination between air and ground units represented a breakthrough in automated military operations. But the methods being used to test this technology raised serious ethical questions about the treatment of military personnel. Falcon 3, are your imaging systems detecting any human presence in the convoy vehicles? Hayes asked Lieutenant Mitchell. Negative, Falcon 4. All vehicles appear to be operating under automated control. Hayes processed this confirmation while maintaining his position in the formation. The convoy was entirely automated, controlled by systems that were sophisticated enough to coordinate with their aircraft without human intervention. The implications for future military operations were staggering, but the immediate concern was the violation of their rights as military personnel. As the convoy approached a series of communication towers that Hayes hadn't noticed on pre-mission maps, he realized that the test was entering a new phase. The towers were likely part of the communication infrastructure supporting the experimental system, and their presence suggested that the operation involved multiple installations and agencies. The desert landscape below was revealing its secrets gradually, but Hayes was beginning to understand that they were flying over a comprehensive test facility that extended far beyond the immediate convoy route. The scope of the operation was impressive, but the secrecy surrounding it raised questions about oversight and accountability. Hayes made a mental commitment to document everything he observed, recognizing that the evidence might be crucial for post-mission inquiries or investigations. The technology being tested had the potential to revolutionize military operations, but the methods being used to develop it were ethically questionable and potentially illegal. Colonel James Peterson watched the telemetry displays with growing concern as the convoy escort mission entered its most critical phase. The pilots were asking increasingly pointed questions, making detailed observations, and clearly recognizing that they were participating in something far more complex than a routine escort mission. The experimental communication system was working perfectly, but the human element was proving more challenging than anticipated. "Sir, the pilots are documenting everything they observe," reported Staff Sergeant Gonzalez. "Their reports are becoming increasingly detailed and specific." Peterson studied the multiple data streams flowing from the aircraft and convoy. The technological test was exceeding all expectations. The automated vehicles were coordinating perfectly with the modified aircraft, and the communication protocols were functioning without any technical problems. But the pilots' growing awareness threatened to compromise the entire operation. "Colonel, we're receiving priority communications from the Pentagon," another technician announced. "They want immediate status updates on both the technical and human elements of the test." Peterson grabbed the secure phone, knowing that he was about to receive orders that would put him in an impossible position. "This is Colonel Peterson. The technical aspects of the test are proceeding flawlessly, but the human subjects are more observant than projected." The voice on the other end was cold and impatient. "Colonel, the test must continue to completion. The pilot's observations are actually valuable data regarding the system's detectability. Continue the mission as planned." Peterson hung up the phone with a heavy heart. The Pentagon was treating his pilots as experimental subjects, and their growing awareness was being viewed as useful data rather than a potential problem. The ethical violations were comprehensive and systematic, but the national security implications were being used to justify any means necessary. "Sir, Falcon Leader is requesting more detailed mission parameters," Sergeant Gonzalez reported. "Denied. Maintain current information restrictions." Peterson watched the displays showing the convoy's approach to the most sensitive phase of the test. The vehicles were nearing a series of installations that would test the communication system's ability to coordinate with multiple ground stations simultaneously. The pilots would undoubtedly notice the additional infrastructure and ask more questions. The etching on the pilot's cockpit glass was now transmitting comprehensive data about aircraft performance, pilot biometrics, and mission observations. The system was designed to monitor not just technical parameters, but human responses to the experimental technology. The invasion of privacy was complete and unauthorized. Peterson had been ordered to observe the test without informing the pilots, but he was beginning to question whether he should continue following orders that violated both military regulations and basic ethical principles. The pilots under his command deserved better treatment than being used as unwitting test subjects. As the convoy continued its progress through the desert, Peterson realized that he was witnessing the birth of technology that could revolutionize military operations. But the methods being used to develop this technology were creating a crisis of conscience that would define the rest of his career. The desert landscape below might have appeared empty to casual observers, but Peterson knew that it contained one of the most sophisticated technological tests in military history. The question was whether the ends justified the means. Captain Maya Rodriguez felt the weight of command as she processed the mounting evidence that their mission was far more complex than anything in their briefing. The electromagnetic signatures, the automated convoy, the mysterious etchings on their cockpit glass, everything pointed to a scenario that challenged her understanding of military protocols and ethics. As squadron leader, she had a responsibility to protect her pilots while completing their assigned mission, but those responsibilities were increasingly in conflict. All Falcon units maintain escort formation but continue detailed observation and documentation, Maya radioed to her squadron. I want comprehensive records of everything we're witnessing. The responses from her pilots were immediate and professional, but Maya could hear the underlying tension in their voices. They were all experienced aviators who recognized when a situation didn't match its official description. The convoy below was clearly operating under automated control, and their aircraft were participating in some kind of experimental communication system. The etching on Maya's cockpit glass was now bright enough to affect her normal vision. The symbol, J794RH, pulsed with energy that seemed to correspond with her heartbeat, suggesting that the system was monitoring biological as well as electronic data. The violation of privacy was comprehensive and unauthorized, but Maya recognized that they were likely participating in technology development with significant national security implications. Base control, this is Falcon Leader, Maya radioed. My squadron is detecting multiple system anomalies that weren't covered in our briefing. We need immediate clarification on our mission parameters and safety protocols. Colonel Peterson's response was immediate and stern. Falcon Leader, you are to maintain escort protocol without deviation. All observations are being recorded for post-mission analysis. No further clarification is authorized. Maya understood the subtext. They were being monitored, recorded, and used as test subjects for technology they hadn't been informed about. The ethical violations were clear, but she also recognized that they were likely involved in something with implications that extended far beyond their immediate mission. Falcon 2, continue monitoring electromagnetic signatures and document any changes in pattern or intensity, Maya instructed Major Thompson. Copy that, Falcon Leader. I'm detecting increased activity as we approach the next checkpoint. Maya processed this information while maintaining her position in the formation. The convoy was approaching a series of installations that hadn't been mentioned in their briefing, suggesting that the test was entering a new phase that would likely involve more complex technology and protocols. As squadron leader, Maya was faced with a decision that would define her career. She could continue following orders and protect her pilots within the constraints of their mission, or she could take more aggressive action to demand answers about what they were being asked to do. The first option maintained discipline and chain of command, but the second option might be necessary to protect her people from unauthorized experimentation. Maya decided to continue the mission while gathering as much evidence as possible. The technology being tested was clearly significant enough to justify extreme secrecy, but the methods being used to test it were ethically questionable and potentially illegal. She would ensure that her squadron documented everything they observed, creating a comprehensive record that could be used for post-mission inquiries or investigations. The desert landscape below seemed peaceful and empty, but Maya knew that they were flying over one of the most sophisticated technological tests in military history. Major Lisa Thompson had spent enough years in military intelligence to recognize when an operation was being conducted outside normal oversight channels. The Convoy escort mission was exhibiting all the characteristics of a black project: compartmentalized information, experimental technology, and command responses that suggested multiple levels of classification. As she continued monitoring the electromagnetic signatures from the convoy below, she began to understand the scope and significance of what they were witnessing. The frequency patterns she was detecting had evolved throughout the mission, becoming more complex and sophisticated as the convoy approached different geographical landmarks. The signals weren't random or incidental. They represented a comprehensive communication protocol that was being tested in real time using their aircraft as active participants. Falcon Leader, I'm detecting signal traffic that includes biometric data transmission, Thompson reported. The system appears to be monitoring pilot physiological responses as well as aircraft performance. Maya's response was immediate and concerned. Specify the nature of the biometric monitoring, Falcon 2. Heart rate, respiration, stress indicators, and what appears to be neurological activity. The system is conducting comprehensive human performance monitoring without our consent. Thompson understood that she was describing a violation of medical ethics and military regulations that went far beyond simple equipment testing. The experimental system was treating them as laboratory subjects, monitoring their biological responses to the technology and situation without informed consent. The etching on Thompson's cockpit glass was now glowing so brightly that it was clearly visible even in direct sunlight. The symbol, J794RH, pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, confirming that the system was indeed monitoring her biological functions in real time. The invasion of privacy was comprehensive and systematic. Falcon 3, are you detecting any similar monitoring from your aircraft systems? Thompson asked Lieutenant Mitchell. Affirmative, Falcon 2. Multiple systems appear to be operating beyond normal parameters. Thompson realized that all 4 aircraft had been modified to participate in the experimental program, and the pilots were being monitored as closely as the technology being tested. The scope of the operation was impressive from a technical standpoint, but the ethical violations were staggering. As the convoy approached a series of communication installations that weren't on any maps they'd been provided, Thompson understood that they were entering the most sensitive phase of the test. The infrastructure supporting the experimental system was extensive and sophisticated, suggesting months or years of development and preparation. Falcon Leader, I'm detecting increased signal activity from multiple ground installations, Thompson reported. The convoy is communicating with a network of facilities that extends beyond our immediate operational area. Maya's acknowledgement was brief but significant. Copy that, Falcon 2. Document everything you're detecting. Thompson understood that her squadron leader was encouraging comprehensive documentation while maintaining operational security. The evidence they were gathering might be crucial for exposing the unauthorized experimentation that was being conducted, but they had to be careful about how they collected and preserved that evidence. The desert landscape below was revealing its secrets gradually, but Thompson was beginning to understand that they were flying over a comprehensive test facility that represented a significant investment in advanced military technology. The question was whether the benefits of the technology justified the methods being used to develop it. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell had always been meticulous about documentation, but the convoy escort mission was presenting her with evidence that challenged everything she thought she knew about military ethics and oversight. The high-resolution images she was capturing told a story of technological sophistication and systematic deception that would have implications far beyond their immediate mission. The convoy vehicles were clearly operating under automated control, but Mitchell's detailed imagery revealed technology that was far more advanced than anything she'd seen in conventional military systems. The vehicles contained sophisticated equipment that generated significant heat signatures, electromagnetic emissions, and communication protocols that coordinated with their aircraft in real time. Falcon Leader, my imaging systems are detecting equipment configurations that don't match any standard military vehicles, Mitchell reported. The convoy appears to contain prototype technology that's being field tested. Maya's response was immediate. Document everything, Falcon 3. We need comprehensive records of all observations. Mitchell understood that her squadron leader was encouraging thorough documentation for reasons that extended beyond normal mission requirements. The evidence they were gathering might be crucial for post-mission inquiries or investigations, especially given the mounting evidence of unauthorized experimentation. The etching on Mitchell's cockpit glass was now bright enough to cast shadows inside her aircraft. The symbol, J794RH, pulsed with energy that seemed to correspond with the convoy's movement patterns, confirming that their aircraft were receiving real-time data from the vehicles below. The integration was sophisticated and comprehensive, indicating extensive development and testing. Mitchell had studied military technology extensively, and she recognized the significance of what they were witnessing. The coordination between air and ground units represented a breakthrough in automated military operations that could revolutionize future combat capabilities. But the methods being used to test this technology raised serious questions about the treatment of military personnel. Falcon 4, are you observing any changes in the convoy's behavior as we approach the next checkpoint? Mitchell asked Lieutenant Hayes. Affirmative, Falcon 3. The vehicles are adjusting their formation and speed in coordination with ground installations that weren't mentioned in our briefing. Mitchell processed this information while continuing her photographic documentation. The convoy was interacting with infrastructure that extended far beyond the immediate escort route, suggesting that the test was more comprehensive and complex than they'd been told. As the convoy approached a series of communication towers and radar installations,